So I came back to the shop after a haul, and this box was sitting inside the door. Wonder what it could be. Okay, that box belongs to one of the projects that I've got going on, but you're not going to see what's in that box until I show it to you in relationship to that project. But I've got a lot of stuff going on in the shop, not in the shop, but a lot of hauls. My truck is in the shop because I just wanted to rinse it off a little bit after a haul, get the mud, salt, and stuff off of it. So, here we go. Welcome to another shop update, and it's going to cover a variety of topics. A lot about hauling, but I'll get into it segment at a time. Bring you back. Okay, I'm in the shop, and I'm just filming this because I did an oil change on the truck yesterday. I'm not going to show that to you, but I just wanted to show you I still got to pick up, I've got to put stuff away and pick up the boxes the oil filter came in. Also, that Dodge Ram, the 2018 Dodge Ram, well, yeah, it was just a 2018. My 2011 originally only had one fuel filter on it. It was located up on the block, driver's side, rear of the block, kind of a hard place to get to, and it was a filter insert. In other words, you took the top of a canister off and inserted a filter into it. The only problem was it was plastic. It had like it has like an inch and a quarter nut on the top of it, and it's kind of in a bitchy location to get to. And it can be tight for some reason. It's an O-ring type sealed lid on the thing with that inch and a quarter nut to remove it, but for some reason, I'm not sure if it's a diesel fuel in the O-ring, diesel fuel in the plastic threads, what it is, but that thing seems to, you try and put it on there, not very tight enough to seal the O-ring, but when you go to take it off, it just seems like it's a terrible struggle. So, one of the things that I did on that 11 was deleted it because the pumps went in the tank. The supply pump that's located in the fuel tank for the injector pump started to go. So I changed it and deleted that fuel filter on it. I put a Foss fuel pump on it, and the Foss fuel pump has two filters, a water separator and a fuel filter on it, much cheaper than the Dodge. So anyways, on the 2018 Ram, there's two fuel filters, and I had run into this fuel filter before that they put in the back. They put it kind of over the top of the drive shaft. You know, it's not directly over the top of the drive shaft, but it's in a location where the drive shaft is in the way to kind of remove it and to drain the fuel filter out. There's no way to get it. Now, you can connect a hose to it, but sometimes when you connect the hose to it, the water separator port won't allow the fuel to come out. You've got to kind of vent it, and so you have to crack the filter off, and then it starts leaking where the gasket seal is on the thing. But that's not the issue. Just let me take you over to where the filters are. This is the filter that I replaced. This is the one that goes over the drive shaft in the back. And this is the one that has the water sensor on it also. There's a wiring thing that attaches to it. The other filter, I think it's this filter. Let me just, sorry I wasn't prepared for this. Yeah. This is that filter that goes in that canister up front. Now, I'm not sure. The two of these filters together costs, I think it's around $120, $130. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I want to say this one is the more expensive out of the two. That's why I had ran into this on a friend's truck, and he wanted me to replace them, and I thought, Jesus, it's kind of ridiculous to have to change this expensive filter that goes on the engine block when there's another filter in front of it. It's also a water separator, but it's another filter. It's probably, the micron count on it is probably a lot higher than, say, this filter is, but still, it's a filter. And so what I kind of told him to do was maybe replace this one, and then every other time that you need to replace the fuel filters, you can replace, say, a more expensive one that goes on the engine block. But anyways, what I actually turned this camera on and was going to show you is this chunk of steel here on the shop floor. I think I had told you in a previous video about it. If not, if I get to the point and realize that I hadn't talked about this, I'll update you on that also after this. But what this thing is, piece of channel iron, as you can see, it's 16 inches wide. I'm not really sure. It looks like probably 3/8, or yeah, it's probably 3/8 in thickness. Weighs, well, I was told it weighs 56 pounds a foot. But anyways, what happened was I had to run some steel out to a contractor west of where I'm located, probably for 40-50 miles west of where I'm located. He's at a ice cream plant and doing some renovations there. And what they're using this for, I have no idea. If I was to guess, I would say it was like a mezzanine type situation where they're probably putting tanks up in the air. But I don't know that for a fact. Anyways, what happened was the steel that I had to pick up for him was like a three-party type deal. Actually, it was brokered through a woman-owned or a minority company. So it's a long story the way that thing goes, but you know, you get it from one supplier through a minority company, and they bring it in. They really are. And I don't want to say this for all of them, but some of them are a front. It's just a way of making money or a way of getting jobs because you are a disadvantaged company or a minority or a woman-owned company. They really don't have a warehouse or anything. They have an office, and they just kind of broker it and buy it off of somebody and bring it into somebody else. And a third party that I was hauling it for bought it off of them. So it was supposed to come, they needed it in 40-foot lengths. They accidentally sent one length in a 50-foot length, and I couldn't put it on my trailer. Well, it's not that I couldn't put it on there. I couldn't put it on there because it would overhang the back of the trailer 10 feet. So what they did is the warehouse that they brought it into had absolutely no way of cutting this thing. They didn't have a cutting torch or plasma cutter, bandsaws. They didn't have anything. So the guy that I was hauling this for had to hire somebody to go out there, cut that 10 foot off of it, and I picked up the remaining 40 foot to take out to the contractor, and I threw this 10 foot cutoff piece onto the trailer. Well, I didn't go back to the guy I was hauling it for right away, so it ended up in my shop. And now what's going to happen this morning, I have to make another steel run out to that ice cream place, and what I'm going to do is just pick this up and throw it on my trailer and take it down and drop it off when I pick up the other steel that has to go out to the ice cream plant. I know that's a long story, probably pretty confusing to a lot of people, but anyways, it's in my shop, and I'm going to throw it on the trailer this morning to get rid of it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is tell you a little story about some hauls that I had to make and some issues that I had with those hauls. And instead of just looking at my face the entire time, why don't I just kind of turn you around and I'll let you see the toolbox. And I'm not going to discuss the tools, but it'll give you something to look at besides me while I talk to you. I had to make a haul to a place called Fishkill, New York, and Fishkill, New York is north of New York City, and it happens to be the headquarters for IBM. And I had to take some bollards out there. Now, I'm not going to show you a clip of anything because you all know what those bollards are. Anyways, I left here on a Monday morning. Just a quick trip to Fishkill, New York, and drop them off, and then I was going to come back. When I left here, it was raining and probably about 42 degrees. I started heading east on the thruway and got to Batavia, and it started snowing. And this was early in the morning. I always like to travel at nighttime, less traffic, less cops, just kind of basically truckers on the road. So I like to travel at night. As I said, I got to the other side of Batavia, which is a town probably about 50 miles east of Buffalo. And it started snowing. And there was no plows on the thruway. So one lane was open. The other lane the passing lane was covered in snow. Every once in a while you would come to a place where somebody had tried to pass somebody else, and there would be some tracks out there, but that was basically it. Again, no plows. So I get to a place just south of Rochester, and it's called Route 390, and it heads south down towards Bath or Corning, New York, and intersects Route 86 down there. So my idea was to kind of head south on 390, because usually as you head south, you get away from the snow. The snow becomes less and less. That wasn't the case. I ran into the same issue on Route 390 as I did on the thruway. No plows, snow. And the snow didn't get any worse, but it definitely didn't get any better. And as anybody knows on Route 390 or has ever traveled Route 390, it is fairly hilly. Well, I made the first couple of hills by the normal thing that people hauling trailers or truckers do, is they kind of gain momentum going downhill for the uphill portion. That worked for probably the first 2 or 3 hills. Then I got south of Dansville. Not the first hill out of Danville. There's a long hill out of Dansville that I made up all right, but I got to the next hill, and I think it's Wayland actually is a town before it, and I tried the normal thing, getting a run downhill and heading up, and I made it 3/4 of the way, and it got stuck. It just wouldn't. I couldn't get any farther up. I'm going to address another issue here too with the Ram and the traction control issue on the Ram. But let me tell you first of what happened to it, and I will explain the traction control thing later. I sat there for an hour and a half stuck. Now, I didn't know what to do. I was in the driving lane and I was stuck. I could probably have tried to back over to the shoulder and get out of the driving lane, but I really didn't want to do that because it was icy, it was snowy, and there was no clear indication when you're backing up of where you're going, how far over you are. People, states in some interstate highways post reflective signs closer together in snow-covered areas just for this reason. So when you're driving at night in a snowstorm, driving at night in rain or anything like that, you have a clearer indication of where the road is going or where the road is in case of a snowstorm by kind of guiding yourself between those reflective posts. That wasn't the case on this road, so I waited there for an hour and a half before finally a plow truck went by. No cops, no nothing. An hour and a half before the first plow truck came along, and what happens is it plowed out on the passing lane. And so what I did is, after he went by, he didn't slow down, stop anything for me. And here I am stuck in the driving lane. Nothing. He just kept going. So what I did is I backed out into the passing lane and then made it the rest of the way up the hill. The rest of the way is pretty flat or downhill after that area. There is a couple of short uphills in which I made it fine. Got down to around Binghamton, New York, and pulled into a rest area down there because I knew that I'd be running into some hills after Binghamton, headed into the Catskills. And I figured I'd wait for the plows to get out in the morning, figuring the plows would be out for commuters that were going to work and stuff. So I sat in the rest area for probably half an hour, 45 minutes. The plow came along, and I pulled out and kind of followed the plow out into Binghamton. And so I went through Binghamton. Binghamton 86 merges with 81 for a while, and then 81 goes off down south into Pennsylvania, and 86 or 17 heads east into the Catskills towards New York City. Sorry, it's a cup of coffee. I was following a plow on Route 17 as it came off of 86 or 81. And it was good. It really hadn't been plowed before him, but I was following him and I was okay going up the hills and coming back down the hills and stuff until we went about 10 miles and he turned around. He turned around one of them U-turns and I had a major hill in front of me that had not been plowed. So what I ended up doing is I pulled into the U-turn thing where he had turned around and headed back west back towards Binghamton again. I pulled in there and I was kind of thinking, do I stay here or wait for another plow to come along and then plow that hill in front of me? Maybe I can back out and back into that. And then I'm thinking, am I going to run into the same thing again? Because it becomes very hilly, major hills in the Catskills on Route 17, and I didn't want to chance it. So what I did is I pulled back and started headed west again towards Binghamton, and got to, again, I kind of was following that plow that had turned around in front of me. And I got to the top of a hill and there was a an exit there, and the plow had gotten off at the exit. So I pulled over onto the exit ramp, and now I was on the top of a hill, had a downhill in front of me, but there was another major hill climb back up again, which again hadn't been plowed. Probably sat there for 20, 30 minutes, and a trooper comes along and he pulls up beside me, and I roll my window down and he says to me, "Are you stuck?" And I says, "No, I'm not stuck." "The hills." Says, "No plows." He says, "Yeah, I know what you mean." He says, "Well, what are you going to do?" And I says, "I'm going to wait for a plow, and I'm going to follow him back into Binghamton." And he says, "Okay, well, I'll keep an eye out for you." But here is a whole thing. It seems like this year, for some reason, plows aren't plowing like they should be. Here is a major road, 86 is an interstate highway with hills on it, and they're not plowing. Now, this same thing happened to me again when I headed into Pennsylvania. I had the same problem. I left here, it was just a dusting of snow. I got over towards Erie, Pennsylvania, and it started snowing pretty bad. And anybody who's familiar with Route 90 on Erie, Pennsylvania, it's kind of hilly through. You really don't go through Erie, you go kind of south of Erie on Route 90, but it's kind of hilly and there's a lot of commuters there. I got to that area and again, no plows, and the truckers were kind of doing the same thing that they always do. They would kind of build up momentum on the downhills and get a momentum going to kind of bring into the uphill portion of it so that you don't lose traction. And they were doing that. So going through Erie, no plows again. What happened was I was following a tractor trailer, and he was kind of breaking it up a little bit so that I could follow him through this thing. And I counted 6 tractor trailers that were off of the road in the ditch. There was cops there. In 2 cases, there was tow trucks there trying to pull the tractor trailers out, and no plows had gone through on the road yet. So I was kind of annoyed with this whole thing. So what I ended up having to do, and getting back to the bollard story, is I ended up coming home. I had a run that I had to make down to Philadelphia the next day, take a generator down there. So what I told the people with the bollards is that what I do is throw those onto the trailer with the generator, make the Philly run first, and then head up to Fishkill and drop those things off up there. But it was so annoying that the lack of plowing for some reason this year, and let me just interject something else. The state governments have an allotment for salt. So we've always known that they kind of burn through that allotment whether they need to or not. Whether there's ice or snow on the road, sometimes you'll see salt trucks out there salting dry roads, just to burn through that allotment. I've seen that a lot this year. But what's annoying about it is you see them out there dropping salt on dry roads when they don't need to, when there's no storm approaching or anything. But yet, when there is a storm, they're nowhere to be found. And I've talked to a couple of people about this, and a lot of them agree with me that they've experienced the exact same thing this year. So I don't know what's going on. I'm really kind of confused. I thought it was just New York State, but it turned out to be in Pennsylvania that they were doing the same thing. So I'm not really sure what's going on. But anyways, that's my story. I'll bring you back. I'm going to show you a couple of clips. I'll show you the generator in a pick and pick. Show you the generator that I took to Philadelphia. I'll put it over there, and so that's the generator that I had to take. I'll put another pick and pick of the building that it went into. This generator, it was a backup generator for the elevator system in this apartment building. The apartment building was 24 stories, housed 500 apartments in it. So they didn't have backup generators, and the electrician that was installing this generator couldn't figure out how they ever got this code passed, that they didn't have backup generators in this building, but they were making them put them in for the backup generator for the elevator system so that people could get out in case of an emergency. But anyways, again, picks and picks over there. And then we'll continue on here a little bit. Okay, so this video is getting too long. I'm going to break it up into two sections. Let me, when I come back, I'm going to explain to you about the traction control system on this truck and what my mistake was in using it. So let me bring you back to part two.